And thanks for joining us for This Week at Evansville. I'm Johnny Kincaid, and we're in the midst of, if you haven't guessed yet, a big election here in the state of Indiana. 6 candidates running for governor, and we are doing our best to get around to talking to all 6 of the candidates as we can kind of break into their schedules as we go. So joining us today is Jamie Reitenour. How are you?
I'm great, Johnny. Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for making the time to be here. Really appreciate that.
Absolutely.
We want to get to know a little bit more about you.
Sure.
You're probably one of the, when people are thinking of this campaign, there are some names that pop up first, and yours may be one of those names that people aren't familiar with yet.
Yeah, that's called being an outsider.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Everybody's making the commercial wanting to be the outsider, but the name that you don't know a lot about is the actual outsider. I was a compliance manager in California in my early 20s, and I was over 1,500 loan officers at the time. Our job was to make sure that everybody was obeying the laws. I also worked in the fraud department for some time. And so I've got a history of desiring just to ensure that the rules are followed. And in our nation, what we call that is our Constitution. Mm-hmm. And so I'm a big fan of our Constitution. I got this calling to run for governor a little over 6 years ago. I was enjoying life. At the time, I had 4 kids. Now I have 5. So 13, 11, 10, 9, and 4.
Wow.
Yeah. So super busy. I've got 4 boys. So homeschool my kids.
4 boys.
4 boys. Come on. Let's keep going. I love it. It's a great blessing. Our quiver is full, as they say. And so I was homeschooling my kids, just enjoying that time. My husband's a mechanical engineer. He's a PE. And so I have enjoyed just spending time as a mom. After working corporate America, being an athletic director, I've worked from secretary positions all the way up, and spent a lot of my 20s in ministry in my downtime. So I actually tell people this is a true statement. For 6 years, I didn't actually even cook in the house, because in California, I lived in California at the time. Parents are in the military, so that's how I ended up in California. But I would leave California corporate, and then it would take forever in traffic to get to your next destination. So for me, it was just better to disciple kids and to meet with women as I was at the time. So I did that for like a decade. I love people. I got this calling 6 years ago. It was just a whisper over my ear. You're going to be the governor of the state of Indiana. I did what I think all Christians should do in that situation. I mean, we know that the Lord calls ordinary people to do extraordinary things. And so I just said, okay, Lord, if it's you, you'll confirm it. And so put it on the shelf. And then 4 years later, after COVID, I was praying with my husband, and we were just dedicating our family to the state of Indiana. I was in the middle of a court case at the time. I've represented my family in court for the past 3 years. So represented pro se in the trial court with Judge Patrick Dietrich, which was the same judge for Governor Holcomb in the General Assembly. And then I just filed an appeal and finished my reply on that appeal about 20 days ago. So we were busy. We had a lot going on. And then all of a sudden, the Lord just impressed on our heart. Now is the moment. We dedicated our family to the state of Indiana. The calling came off the shelf. And then it was radically confirmed by people at Panera that I'd never met before, one of which came up to me in the middle of me meeting with a friend of mine about praying about going forward, and just said that the Lord had put in me a love, and it was a love for more than just my family. It was a love for the people, and I needed to follow that love. And then the next week, same Panera, I'm with the same witness, and a man comes up and he says to my friend, God bless you. And she says, God bless you. Jesus is Lord. He says, he is the Lord, is the everlasting to everlasting. And then he said, do you know the Lord? She said, yes. Do you love him? Yes, with all my heart. And he looked at me for the first time. He said, the people do not know how much the Father loves them. He gave his son. And then he said, you have a calling on your life. It's a calling for your future. And you must walk in that calling. You must forget your past. You must allow the Lord to renew your mind that you might approve the pure and acceptable will of God. And he walked out of Panera. So as a leader that's led in corporate America throughout my life, I know that leaders lead with vision. And so I have spent the last 2.5 years going all over the state of Indiana. At this point in time, it's probably well over 30,000 miles. So I have been on this campaign trail for some time now. And it is a joy to get to know the Hoosier people.
Mm-hmm. It truly is. See, I similar to you, I'm a transplant to Indiana.
Oh, yeah.
I'm originally from the West Coast, Washington State.
Oh, wow.
Lived in California for a while doing radio there, and then kind of migrated this direction. And within a month after I had arrived here in Indiana, I said, "This is home, and I'm not moving."
I know. I said the same thing when we came to Indiana. So being a military brat is what they call us. My dad served in the military. He was lieutenant commander when he retired. So he got into the military, into the Navy. And then when my parents got divorced, my mom actually went into the military. They waived her age. She got her master's in divinity, and then she also served in the Navy, waived her retirement as well. So both of my parents were chaplains in the Navy. And so being in California, it's pretty amazing because, you've got all the different military bases there. My dad was at Camp Pendleton with the Marines for a while. And so when I came to Indiana, as a military brat, we used to say like home is where the couch is, wherever you go, couch is at. Okay, that's where my home is. But when I got to Indiana, I just looked at my husband. I was like, wow, what is this? It's like my soul felt settled. It was amazing.
Yeah.
The Hoosier people are special people, and so is this land.
I used to always say that in California, you get to know what your neighbors have, and in Indiana, you get to know your neighbors.
I love it. I love it. That's so true.
Just read an interesting article about you in State Affairs.
Great. That's always fun.
Yeah. Just out today. And, they talk a little bit about your background in that. But the other thing that they're sharing in there is their polling. And I'm going to, when I talk about polling, I do it with a caveat because this was an online survey.
Dun, dun, dun.
Online surveys, you cannot say this is really the deal, right?
Exactly.
But according to their online survey, Braun has 44% support at this point. Crouch, 10%, Chambers and Doden both 8%, and you and Curtis Hill at 2%, and 26% undecided.
Yeah, let's talk about how much money they spent in 2023, right?
Mm-hmm.
So 2023, they spend $17 million collectively. And this is what we get for it, right? We get online surveys with these percentages after $17 million. Some of them are averaging $500,000 to $1 million, a quote, percentage, which is really a great way for Indiana to grade these candidates on their conservatism, right?
Right.
Because we're going to spend $500,000 to $1 million on a percentage, and then we're going to put that person in office and say, we expect you to be all about conservative policies, smaller government, lower taxes. No, we really don't expect that. This is what I say to everybody. The history of Indiana is incredible. What we know about Hoosiers is they're educated voters. When you look at the history of Mitch Daniels, whenever he ran for governor against...
Oh, wait a minute. We have to have a heavenly choir anytime Mitch Daniels' name is mentioned. No.
All right, there we go. Yeah. The one that started the IEDC, though, right? If we're knocking on the door there. But here we go with Mitch Daniels when he runs against Eric Miller, and then he goes a little bit forward, and he's got Eric Holcomb that worked for him for some time. We know during that time, you're looking at a little under 500,000 voters in the primary. Then you go to Mike Pence, same number. When you get to 2016, an interesting thing happens in the primary, right? Because that's when we had all of the different presidential candidates, right?
Right.
And so at that point in time in the primary, President Trump had 590,000 primary voters, more than all of the prior primaries. And then on top of that, Ted Cruz had over 400,000. So we doubled our primary voters in that 2016 year. That's important.
Wow. Yeah.
That's so important. Everybody's missing that. What that means is it means that Hoosier voters vote when they know it counts. And so this election is wide open. It is a wide open space. And the reason why you're seeing some of the news come out with that report that it's really like 40 to 43% undecided is because they have to account for, when they're being super honest, right? You're supposed to have two or more sources. What's going on with our news? When they are being super honest, they have to account for what happened in 2016.
Right.
And so we are excited about that because when we're on the ground, we see people that are ready for change. They know that we're in a pivotal time in our nation. We've got a spiritual crisis, we've got a moral crisis, and we've got a very intense debate about socialism and capitalism. And the rhino/wolf that's running in office is just not going to do it for us as conservatives. We got to change that.
And what people really need to understand in this primary, just because of the sheer number of candidates, things can shake out any direction. And people need to be aware of that because what's really needed is for as many people to head to the polls as possibly can go.
Exactly. What we tell people is go tell 12 of your friends and then tell them to tell 12. Look, if you want to make an impact as a conservative voter, you need to be shrewd. You've got to catch on to what's taking place in the nation right now, or you're going to end up sitting at your dining room table, watching life go by. Things are going to consistently change and your families are going to be impacted. The way that the liberal movement moves so fast is they do it through communication. They're constantly telling the people that they know to tell people that they know. That's what we do. We say to everybody, you need to go tell 12 people to vote for Jamie Reitenour on May 7th. We say, tell those 12 to tell 12. Now is the hour for Reitenour. It's important that you understand the time that we're in. We are in a time in Indiana where, just as Johnny said, it is a wide race. The history of our governor primaries is always that it's two people, or for the last decade, we've really had incumbents that have been going in, and we're really not seeing a lot of change there in the first place. But now you've got 6 people running this race. That's perfect. You saw something very similar to that in 2016 when President Trump was running and there were all those 16 candidates. Wasn't that radical? Yes. Wasn't it radical whenever they finally got to, I think it was Texas, and they figured out, like, wait a second. Like, I think it was Cruz and Kasich that figured out, wait a second, maybe we shouldn't be on the same ticket at the same time, because they realized they were spreading the ballot thin.
Exactly.
Right? That's exactly what's happening in Indiana. It's an Esther moment. We are exhorting Christians that believe that now is the time to stand for righteousness and goodness to vote May 7th for Jamie Reitenour.
And understand, when you look at the lineup of candidates, whether it's in the gubernatorial race or 8th District Congress has 8 Republican candidates there actively.
Right, that's true.
So the thing of it is that in both those races, every single candidate is trying to out-conservative the other candidates. And so everybody's trying to leap into that space. And you're going to get some people who aren't exactly telling you the whole story.
Well, I'll tell you what, that's a great lead in, because have you noticed when you're driving around the state of Indiana, they've got these billboards up that are saying Democrats can vote for Republicans in the primary?
Yes, they just went up
There was just a PAC that came out and said that they are backing Brad Chambers. It was a PAC that's familiar with these billboards that are going up, Democrats should vote Republican, and they just came out and said they were backing Brad Chambers. Hey, listen, conservatives need to understand that we have certain principles that we stand for a reason. These aren't things that we put them on our refrigerator as magnets. This is what we believe in, right? And so when we talk about what we believe in, smaller government, lower taxes, freedom, faith, life, how many times on the conservative stage have we talked about life? Very little.
Yeah.
Why? Because these people do not believe in life. It's because they are so worried about their political careers and trying to go to the next thing. They don't want to have a conversation about what's really taking place in this nation. Indiana knows a very simple principle. You reap what you sow. If you sow life, you're going to reap life, right? So we want to be those in the state of Indiana, the city on a hill that says we are for life, protection at conception. That's what I say. I believe in it because I believe in the creator of life. I'm going before the circumstances to the one that says in the scriptures that he knew us beforehand. He knit us in our mother's womb. It's something to celebrate. Our communities need to celebrate life. From the womb to the tomb is what we say. And I'm so proud to be a conservative that truly believes in the conservative values that we've always stood for in this country, despite what the elite has tried to make them to be.
All right, so let's talk about a couple of specifics here.
Sure.
Because one of the things that has been an issue here in the state of Indiana during the course of the past year or so is the LEAP project.
Oh, yes.
This is where they want to go into Lebanon with this incredible project there, mixed purpose community, basically, with huge corporate investments going in, but they don't have any water. It's like, we picked a site with no water. So now the solution to that is to build a pipeline from West Lafayette down to Lebanon and pump millions of gallons of water out of their water table into this new development.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
It's incredible. Let's put the people that forgot to have water available in charge of our state. Let's do that. Let's put Brad Chambers and Eric started in the IADC. He was involved in the IADC when it started. Is that what we want to do, Hoosiers? do we want goodness or do we want this? Because what's happening is there are so many people all over our state. District 4 is a perfect example of that with LEAP, but we also see in District 9 with Link 101, the highway there, where they were promised by Holcomb and Suzanne's administration that they would give them $200 million to build a new highway that's going to save them 6 to 8 minutes. I mean, what we're seeing is government overreach to an extreme. And what you have to understand about LEAP is the IEDC started some time ago, right? You really have to do your history on that. You've got to study, you've got to research. The IEDC is in the Indiana code. They're given broad powers. I mean, that's a significant statement. And yet there has been really, truly no disclosure to the people as to what's going on. And now they're stuck with this pipeline that could cost billions of dollars. I mean, really, when you get into billions, you're talking about $20 million per county. And we've got 92 counties in the state of Indiana. Look, we want to be those that are concerned about the future of the state of Indiana, her natural resources, ensuring that all of the people in the state of Indiana are having their needs met in such a manner that encourages freedom. We do not want to be those that get caught in the middle of this conversation about socialism that's being painted like, well, we can take your taxpayer dollars and become investors on your behalf, and you should be okay with that. No, we're not okay with that. We are not okay with that. We're not okay with people bringing in companies that are investing billions of dollars into the state of Indiana, which we are also giving them, right? Mm-hmm. So it's not like they're just coming in, guys. We're giving them $1 billion to come here, right? So they're coming in, they're bringing people, foreigners from other countries to come and work in the state of Indiana. What are they doing with Hoosiers here locally? Nothing. Our education is horrible in this state. So they're spending billions, they're bringing billions, they're bringing people from other countries to this state. Let me ask you a question. What kind of policies do you think those companies are going to bring to the state of Indiana? They're going to bring the woke ideology. And so here we are in a position where you have to decide as Hoosiers how you want to see the trajectory of your state take place. Do you want it heading in a direction where it's going to be all about woke ideology, all about take this vaccine or you're going to be fired? Or do you want to be in a state that believes in freedom? It is time for people to stand. We had a pivotal moment a couple decades ago. We are there again. Hoosiers need to pay attention. I tell you that now is the hour to vote for Reitenour. And I really, truly believe this will be one of the best voting experiences that you'll have.
So this water rights thing is a lot of states already have determined what happens as far as water rights go. In Indiana just happens to be one of those states who's just left that like the just a wide open issue and no clear guidance to who owns water rights. Kind of like, I don't know whether you remember, but a few years ago, the Army Corps of Engineers decided that ditches were navigable waterways.
Wow.
And there were signs along the freeways for the navigable waterways of the U.S. They're at a ditch, a little culvert off the freeway. You know, but that was the feds overreaching,
right? Exactly.
Right? Yep. To try to claim rights to that water because water is one of the most important resources we've got, and
water conservation is very important. Mm-hmm. We have some different organizations that have reached out to us that have said that they really want a seat at the table. They want to be they want to be a part of the cabinet for the governor's office. They want to be those that are included in the conversation besides IEDM. And I think that that is a good suggestion. I think that having people on the cabinet that are concerned about Indiana's natural resources is going to be something that is valuable for Hoosiers. And so I do think this conversation needs to come to the forefront because if it doesn't, what happens is because we're not talking about it, they're actually moving forward and taking things in their direction just because we're not approaching it and we're not educating the public on what's taking place. And so we're going to change that. One of the things that I love is when we get into office every Tuesday, my administration is going to have a press conference. We're going to have local press in the front. We're going to have national press in the back, podcasters welcome. And we're going to be educating the state of Indiana on what's taking place in our administration and in the General Assembly. Constitutionally, that's really what the governor needs to be doing anyway. It should be more than just a one-year address on the state of the state. It really needs to be an update weekly on what's taking place. You need to know what bills are making it to committee and what bills are not making it to committee. You need to know, we need a roll call vote, not a voice vote, right? We want to make sure that everybody's accountable for the actions that they are engaged in as our legislature. So we're looking forward to holding people accountable and getting the right people to the table for these conversations.
That's excellent. All right. So you mentioned education a minute ago.
Yes.
What do we need to do for education in Indiana?
Indiana, you've got to focus your mind on the fact that we are really low in our scores. We're looking at a 30% proficiency, over 100,000 students, 3rd through 8th grade. They can't read, they can't do math. This is a big deal. The current administration throwing out there, we should hold back a whole year, a whole 3rd grade year. This is unacceptable. And all of the politicians, including on the other side with Jennifer McCormick, have been in office when this was taking place. It doesn't matter if you're Curtis Hill and you were the Attorney General. You still have a mouth. You can still speak on behalf of the constituents of the state of Indiana. Education is a well-known statistic up at the State House. They know that we're not doing well, and they have not done anything about it. We've come to the table with a plan. I have put in place my head of education, Paige Miller. She's a mom for Liberty, 30 years in the classroom, and she's got her master's in administration. She is passionate about children and learning. She was a title teacher. She's coming to the table and she's saying K through 5, we really need to focus on the essentials, right? Reading, writing, math, arithmetic, language. We need to focus on the essentials. And then we need to look at bringing technology in. We have been talking to teachers all over the state, and we told them, look, we want technology to come out K through 5 so we can really give a core focus. And then we had some of the teachers that contacted us and said, whoa, we've been spending taxpayer dollars on this new curriculum that includes technology. So we've got to look at that. We've got to weigh in on that, right? That's part of what happens in Indiana. Indiana is not a one size fits all. The reality is that the politicians that are approaching her that way don't know her. She's not a one size fits all. She needs to work way more in unity so that we can move forward and be the strong state that we need to be. But right now, she's very broken up. Counties do different things. School districts are doing different things. And so we have to go to those areas where these teachers are saying, hey, we've got a new curriculum. We're focused on technology in our curriculum. We've got to go there and say, okay, tell us what's going on. We want to look at your scores. We want to see if this is what's best for the students. Get teacher input. But what we're saying right now for a majority of the state of Indiana is that we're taking technology out to focus on the core academics K through 5. Then we're reintroducing that technology. So think of it this way. You've got adopt a highway. We want adopt a classroom, right? We want the private sector, the professionals of our state, including farmers. If you guys only knew how much farmers depend on satellite, that's incredible. That right there is incredible. And our students need to be educated on how much we have changed specifically in that industry. But you want to come in 6th grade year, bring in the professionals from the private sector, have them adopt a classroom, and then talk about how has technology, innovation, AI affected your profession. We want to open up their minds to this conversation. Then 7th and 8th grade, we're bringing back trade, our workshop classes, cooking and sewing. Freshman year, we're saying this to every student in the state of Indiana. We're saying college, career, or calling. We're asking them those 3 questions. We want to plant a seed for vision. We're not saying have to. We're saying that wisdom says you need to be thinking about what you're going to be doing moving forward. Not everybody's cut out for college. Indiana is a working state. We want to be the training capital of the United States. That's what I believe Indiana is. And then senior year, we are the ones that have led with every senior should graduate having completed an apprenticeship. We started saying it. We've been saying it for 2 years. Knock, knock, who's there? The current administration trying to take our ideas, as they always do. Listen, you should red flag that. Anytime you hear me talking and then all of a sudden Brad Chambers comes in and says exactly what I'm saying, here's the red flag. Eric Doden, same thing. Property taxes. Everyone over 65 should not have to pay property taxes. Now he's got a commercial out about it. That's our idea. This is what should concern you about it. The copycat doesn't matter to me. What should concern you is that they're not coming up with their own ideas. Because when we put people into office, we're always trying to figure out, why is it that I voted for that person, almost feeling like they were sitting at my dining room table, but when they get into office, they never actually execute what I sent them there for. You know why? It's because 1, they pay people for ideas, and 2, they steal them. They're not their ideas. When you're a leader, you have vision. You write the vision down plainly so that people can run with it. That's what the scripture says. We're bringing you Indiana goodness. That's why you vote for Reitenour. Now is the hour for that.
All right. So taxes. Suzanne Crouch has made a big push, tax the tax, right? Yeah. Indiana is a very blessed state and has been for a while financially, in that we've had budget surpluses, enough so that we've been able to hold the surplus and send checks out to taxpayers to give them back some of their money that the state took from them to begin with.
Right.
So,
or lost,
right.
In Suzanne Crouch's case, the $1 billion that disappeared.
Okay. So what do we do with taxes?
So we are looking right now at a very important moment in Indiana history where we are seeing on the ground that Hoosiers do not like property taxes. Mm-hmm. So I think what's important for all politicians to do is not to start running on stump based on what you think, what's coming from you and your surveys that you're doing with all your people that you're paying millions of dollars for. But instead, go on the ground and talk face to face with Hoosiers. And what Hoosiers are saying is that they don't like the property taxes. Really, Johnny, it comes from a couple of things. One, we're in 2024, and we're seeing an amazing increase in government overreach. COVID showed us that. Doesn't matter which way people fall in COVID. I've had just the same experience that many people have, where I've had people in my family that have passed away because of COVID. And so it doesn't really... It's a delicate subject. It's not what position you take on COVID. It's the fact that the government told you what to do. That's what's important. Our freedoms are fragile in the United States of America, and we certainly do not enlist our military to go to other countries to stand for our freedoms so they can be stomped on in this nation. That is not America, and we will not stand for that in the state of Indiana. When I look at taxes, I am listening to people talk on the ground. And what I'm hearing is they don't want the property taxes because they don't like the government overreach. The other reason is because you've got these referendums that are taking place in the schools where they're running up, right, all of these taxes, and people are finding that they just can't afford it. And so we are looking at a couple of steps in taxes. One, we're looking at 65 and older, not having to pay tax in the state of Indiana, property tax in the state of Indiana. We know that you're on a fixed income. We're trying to honor that. Secondly, we're looking at a fixed rate when you move into your home. This is what I call a spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down, right? We're not coming in to have radical conversation that's not going to get us anywhere. We're coming in with the voices of the people. People ask me all the time, like, well, how are you that you don't know the state legislator? You don't know everybody's names. How are you going to work with them? No, this is the name that matters. We the people is what matters. The question is not how do I go in and work with them? The question is how do they work with me? Because we are bringing the voices of we the people. I am on the ground. I've traveled 30,000 miles. Anybody up there done that? I'd love to have a meeting with you. If you've traveled 30,000 miles around the state of Indiana, let's go to lunch. Let's have a conversation because you're going to join my team. Because you're going to say that you're hearing the exact same thing that I'm hearing, that the taxes are too high for the people, that we're seeing these schools that look like colleges. Meanwhile, we've got people on fixed incomes. That's not going to work for Indiana. So we're looking at a fixed rate when you move into your home. And then we are entertaining this conversation about completely getting rid of property taxes in the state of Indiana. How do you do that? Well, first, you've got to go through the budget and you've got to get rid of all the waste, fraud, and abuse. I come from that background, and I have enlisted the help of people that work in fraud right now. So we're going to have to do some major reviews of audits of the budget of the state. Secondly, we're going to be looking at some of these departments, and we're going to be shrinking government, right? We really believe in less government. And so I've said, as I've traveled around the state of Indiana, one of the reasons why I talk so much to pastors is because people in the state of Indiana need to realize something. In the United States of America, the government overreach is only going to be answered by one organization correctly, and that's the church, you guys. It's the church. It's the nonprofit organizations. The only way to shrink government is for those organizations to stand in the front because we've got to take care of the people. There are legitimate concerns for orphans and people that don't have money and food. If you think that you can shrink government and not actually deal with that, you're just having a conversation. You're not truly for less government. The way to shrink government is to engage the church and the private sector. I'm going to bring that to the state of Indiana, and I'm going to start it with your taxes, and you're going to hear what other people have to say at the State House about your taxes when we bring it up and we show you on Tuesdays at our press conferences. This is what we're saying to the legislature, and this is what they're saying to the people of the state of Indiana.
And the churches are, I think, key to getting the vote out, but so many pastors are running scared. because they're afraid of their tax exempt status and any kind of blowback they might get, and they're afraid to step out and say, hey, we need to fix things now, and encourage their congregations to show up at the polls.
Yes, we see where that's taken us, right? So around 2005, we had some major conversations in the elections that were taking place in the state about the morals and values of our state. And that was a time where evangelicals did not come forward. Those that believe in life, the Catholic Church as well. We have a responsibility right now that was given in 2005. We have it again in 2024 to stand for our morals and values. This is something that is a freedom that we are allowed. Pastors have to know that if it comes to you standing for your congregation and your congregation being able to stand in their freedoms and their freedoms to worship, where will you stand when the rubber hits the road? We saw in COVID that the government of the United States of America is not afraid to tell churches to shut their doors. That was a radical statement. And that right there broke the chain of the 501c3. When government reached in and told the church what to do, they broke that conversation. And now we need to walk in the freedom that we've been given, that we always had, but now our eyes are open to it. We certainly should be engaged in these conversations that are moral conversations that truly make us, the church, right? And the many that believe in morals and values, the compass of the country. What, we're going to just put that away and expect everything to turn out great? No, we're not. We're wiser than that. So I've spent a lot of time talking to pastors, and what I find is they're ready to stand. They just need a leader. And that's why you do not want to choose anyone else but Jamie Reitenour, because I'm telling you, the governor's office is meant to provide that umbrella for people to come underneath and say, the governor's standing, I'm going to stand. These other candidates are not talking about the moral issues of today with any kind of plan, because they don't plan on leading the state that way. I plan on leading the state that way because I believe you reap what you sow. That's why we call it Indiana goodness. Do not be overcome with evil, but overcome evil with good.
All right. The thing I want to share with all conservative voters is the importance of getting to the polls, casting your vote all the way down the ballot. There are, for Republicans, there are determinations about precinct committee people and about delegates to the Republican State Convention, and those are important races. There are a lot of resources available right now at least in the Evansville area, to help you know who those conservative candidates are. Make sure that you do a little homework and you vote all the way down the ballot, as simple as that. The other thing I want to just share very quickly here deals with the money. Campaigning is ridiculously expensive. It is mind-numbing to think of the money. Chambers and Doden have spent about $19 million on TV, the last number that I saw on them. Braun, $7.7 million on television advertising. Suzanne Crouch, $2.8 million on television advertising. And our last mayoral election in Evansville was one candidate raised over $1 million for mayor of little old Evansville. And 20% of the people went out for the vote on that mayoral election. And it drives me crazy because they could just send a check to me for my share of the amount of money that they spent. You know, you're talking about bucks per person living in the state of Indiana.
Exactly.
You know, they could stand at the poll and pay for your vote. You know, it's as simple as that.
That's really what they're trying to do, right? I don't know if you guys are aware, but this is the reason why they spend these millions of dollars is because they actually work with algorithms, right? So we have people high up that have been on our campaign that have worked in the White House, and so we know these things as well. They have algorithms. The algorithms tell them, you know, who you are as a voter, what house you live in, what car you drive, and they actually have developed these frequencies and impressions, these algorithms that show them how many times they can encounter you before that impression will be made and you'll vote for them. And so they create these algorithms, and then they say, hey, if you give me $2 million, I'll do this many commercials, I'll create this many frequencies and impressions, and I'll hand you this many percentages. Just so you know, don't let anybody tell you otherwise. That's exactly how politics works. When I got involved, they told me there's two ways to win. There's one, millions of dollars, or two, there's the miraculous ground game. We're number two. We've spent less than $17,000 in 2023. trying to get the signatures, and then we executed and actually got the signatures, and they were shocked about that. The news gets, whenever the news interviews me, they're like, how in the world did you do that? I'm like, it's very simple. Dollars don't have heartbeats. People do. So what I want to tell you is, yes, do you want to vote? Yes. May 7th is the deadline, right? You got to vote by May 7th. That's the day that we're encouraging you to vote for Reitenour. But let me tell you something else. You want to go and tell 12 people to vote, because that's the difference in you saying my vote counts and you saying not only does my vote count, but what I believe counts. It counts so much that I'm going to go tell all my friends, we got to go together. We got to get coffee. We got to vote together. Indiana, make it the best voting experience you've ever had. That is Indiana goodness.
Outstanding. Thank you so much for taking time to be here.
Thanks.
Really do appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
And be sure that you subscribe, like, comment. We love to see your comments on the podcast. And of course, subscribing is the best way for you to keep up to date on new episodes coming your way. We're going to be getting all of the gubernatorial candidates on, and we're working on getting some more of the 8th District congressional candidates on with us in the near future as well. So join us again next time for This Week in Evansville.